Caregiving experiences are just as unique as the people involved. Each caregiver has different needs, feelings, challenges, and rewards. At the same time, each caregiver's relationship with the care receiver is unique, influencing the overall caregiving experience. Caregivers often feel isolated, alone, and in need of support. One of the best sources of support is to hear other caregivers describe their journeys. So take a moment now to listen to how some caregivers describe their journey. You may just discover you are not alone.
The stress and burden of caregiving is frequently talked about, but in the midst of the stressful life of a caregiver, it's sometimes hard to think about what's positive or what's beneficial. Today, we're going to talk about that. And we have 3 people here today who can best address those issues. And let's just start off by having you introduce yourself. Judy, why don't you go first?
My name's Judy, and I'm a caregiver for my father, who's in an assisted living facility, and he's 71 years old, and I've been caregiving for him for about a year.
Hi, I'm Mike, and I'm a caregiver for my wife, Connie. She just turned 58 last June, and she's diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's, and she is in a nursing home for nearly 15 months now.
And my name is Pam, and I caregive my husband, Donald, who is 59 years old and was diagnosed 4 years ago with dementia, primary progressive aphasia, which is not as well known. It's a frontal lobe dementia, and he's also diagnosed with atypical Alzheimer's.
Well, the first question let's talk about is, what can you describe as positive or meaningful about being a caregiver? Judy, why don't you start?
Well, for me, it's being able to spend the quality time with my dad, because I traveled with my career throughout the most of my last number of years, and I've never really got to spend quality time with my father. So for me, it's a wonderful experience to be able to do that now. We literally go everywhere together as much as I can, and it's just been a very rewarding experience, and I get to take pictures, and I get to make a scrapbook, and we've determined our own new terminologies like we go and we team, and we'll do a we go, and so it's just been fun. It's been very fun.
I feel like I'm kind of giving back to Connie for her being a caregiver for me several years ago when I had a couple of medical problems going on. I had 2 hip joint replacement surgeries, and she cared for me for several months on both of those surgeries and a few other little things that were going on. And I feel like I'm getting to, give back to her for all the help and caring that she did for me. I'm caring and helping her now.
There is a lot of satisfaction in helping another person, especially when that person is somebody who you really care about a lot. And what we have found is that this is especially true for, well, it's for spouses as well as for adult children like Judy is, that they can help and provide for those people who sacrifice for them.
Absolutely.
That's a good point, Mike.
Yes, it is. Very good. And I think that's what a lot of caregivers are doing nowadays. They are feeling like that's one of their positive aspects of being a caregiver, being able to give back.
I think that's such a great way to look at it, because sitting here listening to you, I was thinking, during our first 30 years of marriage, I was the one who was in the hospital 2 or 3 times, and Donald had to either handle the children or come to see me, et cetera, et cetera. And he was exceptionally healthy all the way through, and until this occurred, and I thought, yep, that's true. Now I'm doing the taking care of and the giving back to him as well. Sure. And I've also found and realized in going through this the last 4 years that a lot of my past work history in being a teacher has come into play, because I have found that I'm using the tools of teaching in terms of structuring his day, in terms of redirecting him when he gets stuck in a particular situation or he gets hung up on something. I also like the challenge of having to come up with a way to solve what I foresee as a potential problem, or I'm not quite addressing it as well as I had hoped, and so
well, sometimes you can use the little fiblets and the little loving lies to help the redirecting of him.
Yes, exactly.
I used a few of those too. They work.
They do.
Yeah, they really
they
work
absolutely
good.
do.
What other things are positive for you? What brings meaning to this experience?
You know, I try to find, like they're talking about is doing creative things with my father. I try to do things as if I was dealing with my grandson, who's 8 years old, and seeing how I can incorporate. So it almost becomes like a game for me of how I can be creative. Like I gave my father 3 birthday parties in 1 week, and he didn't remember any of them. And that was funny. It was funny because it's a lot of effort for 3 birthday parties. But for him, though, it was to see the joy on his face, because he was almost in tears at one of the parties because he says he hadn't been given a surprise birthday party, not even a birthday party period, since that he could remember in the longest time. So to see him choked up and almost in tears, it was very different, but it was very satisfying, and just seeking ways of how I can work with him, because he was in the business world and I was in the business world, so he's always talking business, and so I'm able to talk to him, and I can give the fiblets, but at least I had worked with him, so I know the fiblets I need to tell, and so I don't have to be quite as creative on that, but it helps because we can have those conversations still and still have that bonding experience.
You need to laugh a lot.
Yes, you need to laugh a lot.
We
laugh
have
a
to
lot.
laugh. Laugh helps a lot of problems.
And you know what? And I found if I can't get him to laugh, I get my camera out, and it's like he'll stop and he'll smile for the camera. I mean, and that's how we developed our whole I love you. When I greet my father, I greet him with a hug, and I'll say, gee, Dad, you owe me something. He goes, what? I go, you owe me something. He goes, oh, and he'll give me a kiss on the cheek. He goes, there, I kissed you. I said, no. I said, that doesn't get it. I said, you still owe me something. And he'll sit there thinking about it, and he goes, oh, I love you. And I said, I love you. And, and that's worked very well for even when he's been cantankerous or in my face, is I'll start on, hey, with a hug and start that routine, and it breaks it up, and then we're back on a positive foot. And so that's been very rewarding.
You're talking about a closeness in a relationship. And for caregiving, you get very close to that person that you take care of. But the positive aspect of that is that you develop an intimacy, that you wouldn't have necessarily had if it hadn't been for the caregiving experience.
I personally wouldn't have it if it hadn't been for the caregiving experience, because I brought my father from another town in another state here and where I live, and we wouldn't have been. It would have just been visits maybe 4 or 5 times a year.
Yeah.
So that's been a big difference. Sort of like making up for lost time.
Yeah.
In our intimacy, I would say it's changed focus. It's more about him as a grandfather now than it is about him as a husband. And we tend to focus more on our children and the grandchildren, and he seems more comfortable with that. I know I'm very important to him because I sense this need of him needing me more, or looking for me, or wanting the presence around. But I get such a high, I guess sort of like you were talking about, out of watching him interact with the grandchildren, and the smile that will come across his face is just, I don't know, worth $1,000. It's just incredible to see that absolute uplift of spirit that he gets from interacting. And our youngest granddaughter is only 16 months old, but she will look at him and grin at him, and he will just, melt, absolutely melt. And I just find that just a great gift to receive at this time. And I'm also finding that there's a great satisfaction in doing the caregiving because of our marriage commitment. So maybe in that sense that intimacy comes in play more for me, because I look at it, we all take those vows many years back, that talk about the for better, for worse, in sickness and in health. And I thought, well, okay, here comes a long-term one. And yet I don't mind it. I look forward to it every day, because I feel like every day for us is a new adventure. So it's a very positive feeling
It really
that
is a
I
new
start
adventure
the
nearly every
day.
day, isn't it?
Yes.
When I go see
Yes,
Connie
I think.
at the nursing home, I walk in there, and she just, a big old grin on her face automatically as soon as she sees me. She's familiar with me still, thank goodness. So that just really gives me a big boost there when I get to go see her, and I see that big old grin on her face when I walk in that nursing home over there to see her. And those are the days that I look forward to, getting to go over there and visit with her and see her and see that big old grin on her face when I walk in.
It's a nice
"Oh, where have you been? Where have you been?" Of course, I've been at work.
Yeah.
So,
You know, Sharon, and it's also just trying to take a negative and turn it into a positive, I find, is the challenge, too. I mean, for example, the other day, my father, we were at the drugstore picking up his medicines, and he goes, "I don't remember a thing about yesterday." And he's all upset because he doesn't remember. And I said, "That's a good thing." He goes, "Well, why is that a good thing?" I said, "Dad," I said, "do you know how many people that wished that they could have slept well last night because they had so many things on their mind, or they thought they had so many problems?" I said, "Did you sleep well last night?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Well, there you go." I said, "Now, isn't that a good thing?" He says, "Yeah, that is a good thing." He says, "Because I did get to sleep good, and I don't have to worry about yesterday." And he didn't, you know?
That's a good point. We've talked a little bit about some of the personal rewards of being a caregiver. Are there some other things that you can think about in terms of what has been personally rewarding for you?
I gotta say, I found something in me that I didn't know was in there. I can speak to people now. I can speak in front of people now. And I got to be the family speaker at the Alzheimer's Memory Walk here a couple of Saturdays ago, and I spoke to 1,000 people, they said.
Wow.
And I would have never imagined or dreamed I would have ever been able to get up in front of, talk to anybody about Connie and my road that we're traveling, and I can do it. And I wouldn't have ever even thought I could have done it in the past. I'd have never even entered my mind. And it was in there, but I just didn't know it was in there. So it's I'm going to do it every chance I get. Every time somebody asks me to do something, I'm going to do it for them. Volunteer for everything.
What about you, Pam?
Well, there are a number of things. I feel like I've learned myself a whole lot more. You feel like you know yourself, but I think sometimes it's when you're faced with the challenges and you have to walk the road that you really have to analyze yourself and how you're going to proceed with things and how you truly feel about things. And I feel like I found even more strength than I ever knew I had. And then I feel like I've learned to look at the cup always half full, never half empty. But so more positive in that respect, and patience. I prayed all my life for God to give me more patience, and I feel like He has definitely done that.
I think He's done that for all of us.
Over the last 4 years.
Absolutely.
Absolutely there.
Wow.
And I appreciate the little things. I thought, it kind of puts life in a really true perspective, and maybe some of the things we worried about so much or we thought were so important aren't really as important anymore, but it's just those little things, that tidbits of joy that happen here and there, and I think, wow, it's just a great day.
I have to agree with her. For me, it's finding a lot of strength because when I first got my father and found out in addition to Alzheimer's, he had kidney disease, and not knowing one day the next what his health is going to be like, I didn't really honestly think I had the strength to be a caregiver for him, because I'm already a caregiver for other people as well too. So I found out that I really truly have a lot of strength, more strength than I even thought I was capable of. So that was a real eye-opener for me personally. And it's the faith in God. I've always had faith in God, but it's incredible how much more that I go beyond that now, and that how much I walk with that more. And like she said, how much you even pass on to your children about taking the day that you have and treasuring it. And it's like, slow down and just treasure it, because it's...
Stop and smell the roses.
That's right. You don't know what's going to happen. I mean, my dad cut down my bushes. I had bushes that were like about 5 feet tall and about 3 feet wide. He cut them down to a foot. And I just basically told my husband, I said, how much do you really like our bushes and our landscaping in the front of our house? Because personally, I thought, if my grandson did that, it'd slide. If my kids did that, I would cream them. And here my dad did it, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness. And I wasn't, I mean, I'm not that devoted to the little bush, but it was like, but the man wants to like take down all the bushes in the front of my house. And I told my husband, he goes, well, he said, let's put it this way. Let's go and let them cut them all down. He said, because that way they'll either all grow back together, or he says, we'll do all landscaping in all over again and they'll all be the same height. So, you know, that's coming a long way for my husband. I mean, for me, I can give or take that with a bush, but for the family to realize that, that's a big step. That really is.
In talking about the beneficial aspects of caregiving, one of the things we need to think about is what keeps you going? What continues to motivate you to be a caregiver? Because we do have choices. What do you think, Mike? What keeps you going?
Well, I just keep thinking about and hoping that there's going to be a cure for this horrible Alzheimer's disease one of these years, hopefully soon. It might be too late for some, but it will be in time to help a whole lot of people. And just being able to continue my good health thanks to some wonderful programs I've been through to take care of myself and keep myself well so I can keep taking care of Connie and going to see Connie as often as I can. And I just, that's my main motivation right there, just still wanting to give for her and be with her as much as I can for whatever time we have.
Pam, what keeps you going?
Prayer. Start every day with prayer. And I live my life now one day at a time. I don't worry so much anymore about the what ifs. It's like, well, whatever presents itself, we're going to have to take care of it. So why worry over something I don't know what it's going to look like? So I find if I take the days one at a time, I get a real kick out of the little positives that work well with him, and the things that don't, we just try to turn them around a little bit. But I try to keep walking one foot in front of the other. And I have a little holy card I carry in my wallet. It's basically, I guess, like a little prayer, and it just says, Lord, help me to remember that whatever happens today, I will be able to handle it because you walk the road with me. Mm-hmm. And as long as I have that, I feel like I have all the strength that I need. And then I sing if I'm driving along. My husband and I love to sing, so we put in all the singing CDs, and we sing everywhere we go, and love to listen to music. We watch concerts in the evening because he's always loved music. He used to build his own stereo systems and all. So I try to keep all those kinds of positive things. And I find they rub off on me. I'm doing them for him, but it rubs off on me. And so that way we kind of both go to bed that night with a smile on our face. We've had a good day.
Music is wonderful.
Yes, I think so.
Well, music is wonderful.
So.
Sure is.
Judy, what keeps you going?
It's the I love yous and the hugs. Because I can tell you, every day when I see my dad, even if I've had a bad day myself, as long as I get the smile and the I love you, that's what keeps it going and makes me keep at the front of my mind that that's what makes it all worthwhile. And, you know, it is.
One thing that some of our caregivers have said to us is that they can live with a sense of peace, that they know that they have done the very best job they could for the person that they love. That sense of peace. So that's an important one. Pam mentioned a little bit about some strengths that she had found in herself as she's been a caregiver. What about the other two of you? What kinds of strengths have you found in yourself that you didn't know you had?
I used to never have any patience for anything. If something went just a little bit wrong, I just flip off and get upset and mad and carry on. And I don't do that anymore. I guess Connie's diagnosis with this early onset Alzheimer's and the way she's progressed now, none of that nitpicking stuff is important anymore that goes wrong. Like Pam was kind of saying a while ago, you know, if it turns out, it turns out. If it didn't turn out now, what else? It's out of my control. I can't do anything about it. Ain't no sense in getting myself all worked up and aggravated and irate about it and then trying to get over that. So I don't go into that frame of mind anymore.
Patience.
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 For me, it's been devoting more time to myself. I've always put others first, my kids and their needs and everything and all. And I think one thing that's very difficult for me was to sit there and like make sure I exercise and relax, or to rest, or just eat properly. You know, I've just never put the energies to make sure they're doing that. And I guess that's one of the things I've found is that in caregiving with my father, that I've been able to put those as priorities on the list and make sure every day I get my 30-minute rest and listening to my CD, my StressBuster CD there, and making a priority to do something fun that I like to do, even if it's 15 minutes, whether it's reading the Bible or embroidering or just reading a book. You know, those are the two priorities that I put on my list every day, which is like totally reversal because I was a director in the business world and very goal-oriented, very results-oriented, and those just aren't the priorities anymore. And the fact of making sure I take care of myself so I can be sure to take care of my father and all the other people I need to take care of.
It's very important for caregivers to take care of themselves.
Yes.
Very important to do that. Because if you don't take care of yourself, you cannot be an effective caregiver.
Well, then who's going to take care of my father? If I don't take care of my, and that's really the selling point for me has been, is that if I don't take care of myself, then who's going to take care of my father?
Right.
And give him birthday parties. Or parties, period.
Well, you are definitely an experienced group of caregivers, and one of the things I'd like to ask you is if you had an opportunity to interact with a new caregiver, somebody who's new in that role, what would you tell them? Pam, what would you say to a caregiver?
Brand new caregiver. Well, I would say to them, right off the bat, learn all you can about whatever your loved one's diagnosis is, because the more you learn, the less shock or surprise there is, and you tend to realize that you're going to have to find patients because most of it is in stages, and you're going to have to walk these stages, and you're never sure how long they're going to last. Another thing I would say is find a support group. Don't delay. I did delay. I delayed almost 2 years because I traveled. I was told by a neurologist, travel with your husband now if you want to. So I took him to the last 2 places he told me he really wanted to go. And we had a wonderful spring trip, had a wonderful fall trip, and then we came home and I started redoing our house thinking, well, okay, we're going to stay here a long time. We need to get this place in really great order for him. And I felt like, oh no, I just don't have time, you know, go talk to other people right now. I've got to get this work all done. And my daughter was my catalyst that kept saying, you've got to do this, you've got to do this. So finally, after 2 years, I did. And I wished I had done it sooner because I learned so much from people that are already there who are walking the road. I learned techniques from them. I learned certain aspects that Dom was beginning to show that I hadn't seen before. I had an answer for them without having to look anywhere because I had heard it in the support group and they had shared different techniques, and so I knew then what to do, or try anyway. And as well as the fact that you'll be cared for. In a support group, you're cared for. And it may only be, you know, an hour and a half a month, but it was the best hour and a half of my life. And then there's 2 other things that I have learned, or that I do, and one is I journal. If I get desperate for things, I journal about what I'm thinking about or concerned about, and that's helped. And then I also keep this tickler notebook, and in my tickler notebook, I go through and I look for cartoons that just make me laugh out loud. And if I laugh out loud, I had completely forgotten about this concept. And so after somebody brought it up to me, I went home and I found this cartoon I've had on my desk for 30 years. You can tell by how yellow it is. And it says, it's Ziggy standing on a mountain saying, but I have tried again. And I thought, that's the best statement there is for caregivers who work with Alzheimer's patients, because you try and you try again, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I find that looking for cartoons that make me laugh out loud make me feel very good.
I would look for things to do fun for yourself as well as for the person that you're caring for. I think the biggest thing would be is not to lose yourself in the caregiving role and where you become isolated and you don't enjoy doing the things that you used to enjoy before. And that's so easy to get sucked into, and it's hard to come out. And that's why, I put it as a priority on my goals, because I would completely lose myself and my father. And so I would tell people to do that, and just to find something positive every day. Even if it's a bad day, there's always something positive that you can grab onto and go with it.
Mike, what do you have?
I would tell a new caregiver, do not procrastinate. I kind of did that myself a little longer than I should have, and I'm making up for lost time now, though. Any new caregivers need to get out there and get on every mailing list you can get on, to get information in the mail, to go to these health fairs and conferences and seminars and symposiums and learn, get educated, like Pam was mentioning a while ago. Get yourself educated on the Alzheimer's disease or whatever dementia you've diagnosed with. And the support groups, Pam mentioned a while ago also, I'm in 2 support groups myself. And be sure and sign up and go through the StressBusting program, because that saved my life, going through the StressBuster program after I was my second Wednesdays when I needed to place Connie in the nursing home. And I got 7 more Wednesdays under my belt after that, and it saved my life. I'm not sure where I'd be at today. And you just got to get out there and get yourself educated and meet other fellow caregivers and go to these support groups and talk about it, talk out loud about it. I talk to myself at the house a lot, but it's not the same. It's not the same. You need to get out there and meet other fellow caregivers and go to these health fairs and everything, and volunteer. Wow, I can't mention that enough. Volunteer for anything and everything you can, because every organization out there needs volunteers, and that's one of my major goals, is to be out there and volunteer as much as I can.
And if I can add one more thing too, check in with your local Alzheimer's Association, where we have now moved in Austin. They have, I was double checking it the other night, 8 respite centers, and respite was not a word I was very familiar with until Don was diagnosed. And respite allows a caregiver to have maybe 4 or 6 hours off a day, and they will take your loved one and give them activities, etc. And in Austin, all 8 centers do it once a week, but they offer it for free. So it's basically a gift to the caregiver to have 1 day off a week.
I had Connie in a very good respite program here in San Antonio, Pam.
And didn't you feel great having
well, it was good for her.
off?
I was having trouble keeping her active at the house. I was trying hard, and it seemed like I was getting less and less activity stuff for her. I just needed some real professional help, and I luckily found a wonderful respite program. I took her 3 days a week.
Oh, wonderful.
And I mean, it really turned us both around, and it helped our time we had left together at the house a lot easier to handle and to be together those last about 1.5 years, I think it was. So.
Well, what we've tried to do today is bring up a bunch of different things related to positive and beneficial aspects of caregiving. And one of the things you guys have done such a really good about presenting is attitude. It's all about your attitude and your perspective on your situation. And that will help make a big difference in the lives of caregivers.
Yes, it will.
Alzheimer's disease is frequently referred to as the long lingering death or the long goodbye. And the reason for that is that frequently after someone's diagnosed, it's sometimes 8 to 20 years till they die. What that means for the caregiver is many years of being a caregiver. That can result in a great deal of stress for the person who is the caregiver. And what we want to do today is talk about some of the stressful things related to caregiving. And we have 3 caregivers here today who are the best people to address that issue. And what I'd like for each of you to do is briefly introduce yourself and tell us who you're taking care of.
I'm Judy, and I'm taking care of my father, who's 71 years old, and he lives in an assisted living facility.
I'm Mike, and I'm a caregiver for my wife, Connie. She's 58 years old, diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's, and she's in a nursing home now for nearly 15 months.
And I'm Pam, and I take care of my husband, Don, who is 59 years old, and I have been doing this for 4 years at home. He was diagnosed with dementia, but it's a frontal lobe dementia called primary progressive aphasia, and along with it, he has the atypical Alzheimer's.
The first question we want to talk about is, what is the most stressful thing for you as a caregiver? Judy, why don't you start?
I would say it's the dealing with the whole disease itself, because there isn't an exact roadmap to tell you what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, or anything like that. It's sort of like, you know, if you had the measles, you would know what the beginning phase of it and the ending phase is, and it has a cycle and a pattern. Alzheimer's isn't. It can vary from day to day what you're going to deal with. And, you know, for me, for my father, because he's got other health issues, I don't know if he's going to live another day from day to day or not. So I'm constantly back and forth with medical issues. But the other thing is I also have that's very stressful is a sibling. I only have one sibling, and we're at the point right now we can't even talk to each other. And so it's caused a lot of stress and friction in the family as well.
One of the things that happens in the process of dealing with the disease in the family is problems in families. This is very, very common in dealing with Alzheimer's when it comes and enters into a family. And sometimes relationships that might have been a little bit on the edge now are just thrown over the edge.
That's true. It's my sibling and I had a relationship, but it was a very distant relationship because we lived so far apart. And for us, it's just escalated to where we just don't speak, and it's just because of I'm dealing with it every day, and I understand what I'm dealing with because I've gotten involved, and that person doesn't. Mm-hmm. And it's financials. It's also arguing over financials and the cost, and you know, and what kind of care is going to be provided. So it's just differences, and you know, not having a clear path of how to address it and how long you're going to have to deal with it.
Mike, what's stressful for you?
Connie was diagnosed August 30th of 2002 when she was only 52 years old. And I had no idea the road we were going to be going down. But her first 2 words was, when she was diagnosed, was, "I'm doomed." She knew about Alzheimer's and what was going to be happening to her. But I didn't know it. And I thought I was Superman. I thought I was going to be able to take care of her the rest of my life. No way. There's no caregiver in the world that's going to be strong enough to handle this road all by themselves. You're going to have a lot of help. And I'm still, well, she's in the nursing home for 15 months, and I'm still in that house empty for 15 months. So that's a tough one to still handle. And that's all I'm doing. I'm handling it. It's not fun being at that house, and I don't really like being at that house, but that's the house, and I'm going to have to handle it. And I'm getting to the point where it's going to be easier and easier, I know, eventually. And I got a lot of good friends and fellow caregivers that are helping me stay busy and stay active, and that's kind of keeping me occupied and helping me handle the empty house and not having Connie there with me anymore.
That's a hard, very hard position to be in. We had a caregiver say to us once, he said, "You wait and wait for your golden years, and now my golden years have turned to hell."
Yes. Capital H-E-L-L. For sure. It's just mind-boggling how this disease is just progressing so fast. It's just devouring her, something fierce. She can't hardly communicate with me anymore. She just kind of talks. It's kind of a tough word to say, but this is what she talks. She talks gibberish. It's just incomplete sentences, and she can't find the right words to say. But she just constantly says, talking to me, though, so I just throw in a word every once in a while just to, hopefully I'm throwing in the right word to keep her talking. As long as whatever she's saying, I don't care, as long as she's still saying it.
Do you know Don is approaching that with this primary progressive aphasia. He's losing his ability to retrieve language to speak, and at the same time, he's losing his ability to intake and understand when you talk to him. And the other evening, he was trying so hard to tell my son all about this TV show, And it was amazing, the lack of nouns and other things that would have immediately told us what he was talking about. And finally the light dawned on me, and I was able to say, oh, he's talking about such and such a show. And but you know, I know your frustration. Don was diagnosed at 55 years of age.
We have a lot
And
in
you're
common.
right, approaching retirement. And you're like, wow, guess this changes the focus a bit. But you know, and I think along the same lines, I really miss the fact that every day I'm losing the husband I've had for all these years and years and years, and the personality's not quite the same.
Yeah, I've already lost Connie.
Some aspects have become very prominent that he had, and other aspects have gone by the wayside. And his reaction to things are different today than they were most of our lives. So I think you do a lot of grieving every day that you walk the road, because every day they're slipping away from you more and more and more.
It's just not my Connie anymore. It's just another person there that's horribly sick with Alzheimer's disease. And I just recently got her, they had to take her off of her Exelon medication, which slows down the progression. She's losing like a pound a month. And that's mind-boggling there. And then I had some very good advice to go ahead and put her on hospice care too. So it seems like every time I turn around, I'm having to make a very horrible decision.
Those are
for her life.
difficult decisions
Difficult
to make.
decision
Yes.
for her life.
Pam, what do you find the most stressful in your life?
Oh, well, I would say Don's inability to communicate, because it puts you in the role of guessing game. And, you know, we're hitting the point now of pictures, drawing pictures, or I'm drawing pictures, or I'm pointing to something to try to keep that bond of communicating back and forth. And I think it's adjusting, too, to the inability of all the things he used to do. Those were his manly duties, and I had the female things over here I was expected to do, and it worked very well for us. I mean, we were kind of like the little team bucking each other up for what each other did, and now all of a sudden it's like I'm having to take on all these roles and learn how to do all these things. Do I care about really learning them? No. Do I have a choice? No, not really. I mean, if life is going to proceed, somebody's got to pick up the initiative, so I try very hard to do that. And then I think the fact that you can't share with them anymore, the intellectual level of communication is gone in so many ways. And adjusting, it's all in the adjustment, and it's, I mean, I feel like I just cry inside me every day for the changes.
I don't cry inside.
Yeah.
I don't hold it in.
Yeah.
I don't know what my neighbors have heard coming out of that house in my neighborhood there, but sometimes I'd really cut loose and really get it out of my system. And it's not good to keep bottled up inside of you. That's what I say about getting out and going to support groups and meeting other fellow caregivers and talking about our situations, and keeps my mind maintained, my brain maintained, and keeps me active. And I don't know what to do with that. If I wasn't being able to do that kind of things, I don't know what I'd be at today. I don't know where I'd be.
Because of the stress in your life and your situations that you're in right now as a caregiver, what adjustments or changes have you had to make in your life? Judy, what about you?
I had to drop out of school or drop some courses. I go to college, so I had to reduce my class load, and I even went a semester I didn't take in classes. And then I had to rearrange stuff in my family life, because I'm a caregiver for several other people with their own health issues and so forth. And so we've really just had to restructure what's important to get done in the house. Like, for example, I like the house to be vacuumed and dusted. Stuff like that is like, you know, that's not the highest priority anymore.
Well, ain't that the truth?
You know, it's things like that you need to get done, but you just literally don't have the time unless you just want to destroy your own health. And it's stuff like that I've had to adjust and take care of. And you know, and changes with the family too. I mean, literally we've had to change the expectations of it, the people live in the household. And even my other children that don't live in the household, get them to change their expectations and making them realize that, hey, you know, your grandfather's sort of like a 3-year-old. He says he's got to go to the bathroom. You go find a bathroom now. You don't wait and say, hold on just a minute, Dad, and wait. You can't do that kind of stuff anymore. So it's been big adjustments like that that they just don't understand, and trying to make them understand. And the fact that it does change every day. You don't know what you're walking into.
Some people, you just can't make them understand it, no
No,
matter
you
how hard you
can't.
try.
No.
They're just not going to understand it. They're not involved enough to understand.
And that's why I've had my dad at practically everything that I could, any kind of family event or whatever to have the kids, some other things see, so that if they do go and help relieve me or whatever, they can understand how they have to deal with it, because you can't treat them the same way you did before.
One of the things that people have commonly talked about with Alzheimer's disease, it's a roller coaster disease, because you never know from day to day what's going to happen. And you've got to be able to adapt and change accordingly. Pam just made a recent big change of her life. You moved.
Yes, yes. Because there was so little known about my husband's diagnosis at the time, I was told to treat him like an Alzheimer's patient. And so it was only about 2.5 years into the caring for him and constantly researching the internet and looking for anything I could find about his specific illness that I understood it more. And the more I understood, the more I realized, well, maybe we did have a few choices. And so the choice I made, I guess, in light of trying to take care of myself as well as for him, was to move closer to our children and our grandchildren, who fortunately all happened to be in one place. So, so we picked up after living 32 years in this house and packed up and moved him. And at first I thought, oh, this won't be too hard. He'll maneuver along, and I would bring him the boxes. But it soon became obvious and evident that in some ways he was very much like an Alzheimer's patient. And he would get so fixated on something, and oh no, we just can't give this away, or oh no, we can't put that in a garage sale, we have to take it with us. But we were downsizing, and so it became quite the issue. And I think my only positive was the fact that I made the effort to, because it was about an 1.5 hours drive out of town, to take him up to watch the new little house being built, so that he could get very much adjusted. And we walked through the frames and we called the rooms, and so that every week or every 2 weeks without fail we were in that house maneuvering, talking about this room and that room and the other room. But it was a big job, and by the end of it I was so worn out. The day I closed the papers, I drove up to my father-in-law's, who graciously kept my husband, and I literally walked in the house, went straight to bed, and I didn't wake up for like 14 hours. I mean, I was just whipped. And because you realize you're doing it alone. You're doing it alone.
Mike, one of the changes that you made in your life is that you took an early retirement.
Yeah, Connie was diagnosed August 30th of 2002, and then I could tell shortly after that I was going to need to be home with her, because she was getting, I don't know what kind of a word I should use here. She just needed me to be at home with her to care for her and be her caregiver. So I finally retired December 1 of 2002 and stayed home with her for about close to 4 years there before I placed her in the nursing home.
And along with early retirement has come financial consequences too.
Yeah, it was talking about downsizing. I had let Connie handle all of our finances over the years. She just started doing it when we got married. She started doing the checkbook and everything like that every month, and I said, okay, that's fine, she can do it, I don't mind. I didn't know a clue what was going on with that checkbook when she got to where she couldn't do it anymore. And then she was at a point she couldn't even show me how to do it even. She'd got so bad. But there's a lot of surprises there, and a lot of things that I want to share with everybody that I can. So hopefully caregivers in the future will be more prepared than I was, because I was not prepared. And that's what we need to do, help each other out.
Sometimes caregivers express that they don't take time to take care of themselves. Have you ever reached a point in your life where you just felt overwhelmed with the responsibility of being a caregiver, and what kinds of signs or symptoms did you have?
Ooh, for me, I put on 20 pounds in 6 months when I first brought my father here. And actually, I felt terrible. I mean, I felt like I was very sluggish. I compared myself to a slug, that's about how I moved. And actually, I went for an annual physical exam, and found out that my thyroid was just, I didn't have one anymore as far as my body was concerned in relationship to my pituitary gland. And so my health was being affected. And so that's something that I, really worked on, and actually worked on even changing the game plan of even what I ate in a diet aspect to sort of boost my metabolism and sort of move forward. So, I mean, that's just something you have to work at as a caregiver, is making sure that you go for your physicals and regular doctor checkups.
So your health,
My
your
health,
physical health was affected because of your caregiving role.
Yeah.
Pam, what about you?
Well, I would have to say ditto on that, but on top of that, I also went through, I think, what I would probably call anxiety washes. Sometimes I'd awaken at 2 or 3 in the morning, and it didn't matter how much I tried to go back to sleep, absolutely could not, and I was exhausted. I wanted that sleep, and it just wasn't going to happen. And I would get up, and I'd pray a little, and then I got to where I would write in journals. I try to write down the things that were driving me crazy at the time, or my biggest concerns, hoping that maybe, well, if I put them down on paper, and then I could fix a cup of hot tea, and usually after about an hour and a half, it would subside, and I could go back to sleep and sleep. And that happened quite often. It doesn't as much anymore, because I think I've finally learned how to take better care of myself. But I went through an awful lot of anxiety washes.
I kind of lost, I did kind of opposite of Judy here. I lost weight, lost energy level. I didn't have hardly any energy to get anything accomplished around the house, a little more caregiver for Connie during those first several months. But that's when I finally got out and got into support groups and got extra help to get my attitude set better.
We've talked a little bit about some of the things that you've done to help yourself cope with your stress. Let's see if we can try to highlight some of those. Pam, what helped you the most in coping with your stress?
Well, I think going to a support group, because I've learned so much about different techniques to try with my husband. I realized I'm not the only one shedding tears, whether inside or outside. And that there's a lot of people who grieve. Caregivers grieve as they walk the road. So I think I found a lot of validation, which made me feel better right off the bat. And then I think educating myself about Don's condition so that I better understood, and I wouldn't tend to get so uptight about the next step.
Yeah, see, that's what I was having trouble with too, Pam.
And I think...
You get uptight about things a lot quicker or sooner than I normally would have.
But education is very important.
Absolutely.
Because with Alzheimer's being this roller coaster disease, you need to get educated ongoingly. It has to be a continual process.
Constantly.
Yeah. And one final thing I'm going to add is I try to make time every day to do one thing I love, even if I only get 30 minutes at it. And I've got several things I love, so I may be reading the latest Harry Potter book if I can spare the time, or else I've got a Nora Roberts novel going, or I'm sewing, or I'm cooking, because those are all things I enjoy. So I've decided you just got to try every day to give yourself a little gift.
For me, I mean, it was literally my husband sitting down with me, especially with my health issues and all, and saying, you know what, we're just going to redo our life. And basically, he's the one that sat me down and said, we're going to prioritize things in life and what's number one, and go from there down. So literally we sort of flip-flopped. You know, it was like number one was that I was going to exercise and rest and relax to work on focusing on my health. And then from there we put the priority of my daughter that still lives at home and my father, and then we just digressed on down the list from there. So that he was basically blessing and saying, here's what I feel the list should be of priorities, and everything else can sort of just fall off. And so that really helped tremendously.
We've got a saying that we frequently will talk about with our caregivers, and I'd kind of like to close with this. And this is how it goes. You may not be able to change the stressors in your life. You can't change the fact that you're caregiving for your loved one, but you can change your way you react and respond to them. That's what it's all about, how you cope with it.
That is true.
I'm Barbara Price, and we are caring for Norm's mom, and that's been for about 3.5 years, and she was diagnosed about 2 years ago with Alzheimer's, early stages Alzheimer's.
And I'm Norm. Barb and I are married and take care of my mom.
My name is Kay Bigler. I've been caring for my husband for 5 years, and his diagnosis is Lewy bodies dementia.
My name is Nicole, and I'm caring for my mom, who is 65, and she was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. She got diagnosed almost exactly a year ago, and it was probably three years prior to that we first started noticing symptoms. So she was about 61 at the time, and like I said, she's now 65, just turned 65. So.
My name is Mary Ann Prado, and my husband and I, Rick, are caring for his elderly uncle by marriage, Tony Rivera. We've been caring for him almost 8 years now, probably closer to 9, and we've been very heavily involved with him. He has been diagnosed with frontal lobe dementia.
You know, the thing that has helped me the most is just me. The tools that I've learned to deal with, whether it's a breathing technique or meditation, those type things have been my biggest help. The second has been the support of my friends and my family.
Well, I went and visited a psychologist, and I got on antidepressants, and my husband kept denying that he was depressed, and when he went and talked to his doctor, his blood pressure had gone up quite a bit, and they put him on antidepressants too. And then we progressed to sleeping pills. But we were both afraid to take those because we needed to be alert in case Tony needed us. It's been a very hard road. It's brought my husband and I even closer together than what we were before. We go to church more. I can't say that we've really handled it well. I mean, I can't say we've handled it well. I can't say we haven't handled it. I don't know.
Every morning, I mean, we have time together, we pray together, we talk about the day together.
We walk or bicycle. By the way, we're biking now.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So, yeah, we exercise together, and we do some of the things that we do. We're involved in our church, and we help one another with the responsibilities that we have there. I guess we really do try to work as a team in a lot of things. So making time for each other in a way is kind of natural for us.
The other thing that we did do, though, is we did say at least once a month we're going to go out and eat lunch, which to us is a big treat. And so one time we even went to Nadler's, but you know, just go out and have a treat. Where I love to cook, but you know, even people that like to cook sometimes like to eat somebody else's food, or just not have to plan, clean up, and whatever. And yeah, and that helps. And again, our kids have said they're because they already know, because we've been sharing as we've been educated about it. It's like, we want to give you some downtime, so schedule it, and there, you know, we're working on a week here or 5 days there. Kind of, our goal is like every 3-4 months to have some days by ourselves. I mean, we may be with another family member, but something that we're doing. That's kind of our goal for 209, I guess I would say.
We do take time for ourselves.
Oh, right.
And Mom is not such that we can't leave her. We left her to come here. We can leave her during the day, and she's fine, so she doesn't need that kind of care at this point.
My husband and I sneak off and have little movie dates. We went to a baby shower, which my husband wouldn't ever be caught dead at a baby shower, but it did us so much good, those 3 hours away of nothing. And before we left, we made sure Tony had my cell number, and I wrote it down in big letters so that he wouldn't feel anxious. We asked him if he wanted to go, and I knew he wouldn't want to, but just to ask him to keep him involved. We made sure all the doors were locked. He'd already been fed, he had his dessert, he had his candy handy, and on occasions that's what we've done, but again, in the back of our minds is always that little word guilt, you know, of let's not stay out too long because he's going to need us, or this and that. And several times it has happened. He has called and he just says, Mary Ann, you're coming back, right? Of course I'm coming back. I'll be back just in a little while. And then I feel guilty. I got to, let's rush. Let's go back because, you know, I don't want him to open the door and take off. Now I feel better about it because we have hired that nursing agency and it has relieved us like 150% of it. All we have to do now is either they call us or we call them. And they have also helped us relieve some of our guilt and a lot of our stress, because even though we're still involved, we're not as emotionally involved. We're kind of can take a step back, and that has helped a lot. We also realized in the long run that perhaps we ourselves were stressing Tony out just by being there every day. And that was a very hard decision too, because while we wanted him to get well, how do you get somebody well if you're not there? And I believe that it was the best thing that we did was to move away again and now just visit him when we want to instead of having to, or him up in our face every day. We also went to court and got a different guardian. So although we are still heavily involved, we are not the guardian anymore. And I think it makes it easier on him because all Tony could remember in his mind was, well, Mary Ann takes care of my money. Mary Ann does the grocery shopping. Mary Ann does this, and Mary Ann. And I guess losing independence is very, very hard. I try to put myself in his shoes, and it's hard.
One of the things that one of my friends said to me, and one day when she asked me how I was doing, and I just broke down and started crying, you know, it's always bubbling right there beneath the surface, and I'm okay pretty much as long as no one asks me how I'm doing. But once someone asks me how I'm doing, it just bubbles over, and that happened to be one of those days, and I just started crying. And she was like, Nicole, she said, you have to remember that you're not Miss Everything. She said, you can't be everything to everyone. And you know, I've thought about that a lot, and it's true. So I just, and I don't think anybody expects that of you, really, when you think about your loved ones and your husband and your children and your family members. And no one expects you to be everything. So you have to give yourself the freedom to not feel that pressure, and just know that you're doing the best you can, and be satisfied with that.
I think one of the biggest routines that I have now is I have tried to set aside a nap time every day. I just feel so exhausted that I feel I need that. And so I've given myself permission to not do anything. And that's a real biggie for me. So, you know, I try to take a nap each day. I still do all the things I need to do to take care of my husband. There's still many things, you know, taking him to the doctor and going to see him and making sure all of his needs are provided, whether it's a chest in his room or clothes that he needs, or, you know, it's just numerous things that just daily living. And so part of my time is spent doing that, but I do not run to the assisted living home every day by any means. Any dementia is bigger than any one person. You've got to get help for yourself, not for the one you're caring for. I'm talking about getting help for yourself, whether you're calling the Alzheimer's Association and getting involved there or with a good friend, or you know someone that's been through this, but you've got to get some help. For me, I called the Alzheimer's Association, and I started going to the meetings, and through the meetings then I found the StressBusters class, and that gave me the most tools to deal with what I was dealing with.
The StressBusters program helped me immensely with that, and taught me that I really do need to take care of myself first, or I'm not going to be able to take care of anyone else effectively. So just little things. I mean, honestly, work is a big personal fulfillment for me. So I've cut down my work schedule from full-time to part-time, and I was fortunate that I was able to do that. But I work 3 days a week, and I try to do a very good job, and I get a lot of personal fulfillment out of that, and satisfaction and pats on the back and stuff like that. And then other than that, I just try to. I think this whole experience has really made me reprioritize my life. Different things are important to me now. I used to be a workaholic. I mean, and my mom was a workaholic, and I can't help but wonder if that doesn't have something to do with the fact that she has this disease. But I realized that that's not what life is all about, that it really made me want to enjoy my life more and spend more time with the people that I love, spend more time with my husband and my children and my family and my mom while I have the time to do that. So, other than that, just how do I take care of myself? Just little things. I mean, every night when I get in bed, I read something just for fun. You know, not about Alzheimer's, but even if I'm so tired I can only read for, 2 or 3 pages, I still read a novel or just something that's, just for pure pleasure.
So I've just given myself permission to do what I want, and I bought a lot more vegetables and fruits, and when I fix the meals, I can just fix meals like that I enjoy. I don't have to fix the big meat meal like you do for the husband. Like I say, I've just given myself permission to do nothing except what I'm comfortable doing at that time.
Well, it is a very stressful situation for anyone that's going through it, whether you're caring for a parent or a spouse. I can't imagine that, really, but or another family member or a loved one. It is a very, very stressful, and you deal with a lot of grief. I've had, times where I just was really, really sad over what's going on, times where I was really angry about what's going on. I mean, this is not a time in my life where I want to be reading books about Alzheimer's. I want to be reading books about raising boys, and so it's, it's just the range of emotions that you go through is phenomenal with this, and it can fluctuate from day to day, from minute to minute. And as I said earlier, a lot of times for me, I feel like it was just bubbling beneath the surface, and as long as no one asked me if I was okay, I was fine. But once someone asked, it just all bubbled over. And I'm Ellen, I'm in pharmaceutical sales, and so I call on doctors, and that's what I do for my job. And I've become, my physician actually is one of my customers. I call on him, and there have been a couple of occasions now in the past month or 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, that he and I, he would pull me aside when I go in, and he'd say, "Nicole, how are you doing?" And I'd be okay at first, but then he would start asking me more questions and delving a little deeper, and I would start crying. And obviously, professionally, that's not something that I felt good about. But he had become a friend, and he made me feel like it was okay to do that, and he was asking because he cared. And the second time that happened, which was about 2 weeks ago, he said, "Nicole, do you want me to give you something that's going to help you through this?" And I was very resistant to that. I said, "Well, I don't, no, because I feel like this is part of life, and this is something a lot of different people may have to deal with in their life, either struggles or hardships or Alzheimer's or whatever that case may be, the death of a parent." And I said, I feel like it's part of life, and why not and I should be a little bit depressed or sad at this time in my life, and so why not just allow that to be what it is and just power through it? And his response was, he said, you know, that's okay for a couple weeks or even maybe a couple months, but when you start, he said, you've been dealing with this now for about 7 months, a really stressful, very emotional situation. And he said it's not, when you start dealing with something long-term like that, it can start having effects on your body. And he said, you need to think of it as a cast. He said, if you break your arm, you put your arm in a cast and you wear that cast for 3 months, and then your arm heals and you take it off. And he said, the end is not really in sight at this point for you. He said, but I think that for you to get through these next couple months of moving your mom, this is going to be a really difficult time. He said, why don't you let me give you something that's going to be like a cast that you can wear for 3 months and then take it off. And so I had really mixed feelings about that, and we talked about anxiety. I told him I didn't really feel like I need something for anxiety. I have trouble sleeping some of the time, but for the most part I sleep okay, so I didn't feel like I needed something for sleep. But I said I'm sad a lot of the time. I feel, sad even like when I'm with my little boys and stuff. Like I'm just down. And so he gave me some samples of an antidepressant, and I didn't even take them for the first couple days. I went home and I talked to my husband about it and said, how do you feel about me getting on an antidepressant? And he said, Nicole, if you feel like it's going to help you, I'm totally supportive of that. And so I said, well, I think I'll try it. And I kind of committed to myself that for 2 weeks I would try it. And if it didn't help, then I would stop or try a different one, or because I understand they work very differently for different people. And so I tried it, and the first 2 days I did not feel good. I felt very antisocial. I wanted everyone to leave me alone. But then the third day it was like the clouds parted and the sun came out. It's almost amazing to me that a drug, even being in pharmaceutical sales, it's almost amazing to me that a drug can do that for someone. It didn't make me feel euphoric. It didn't make me feel drugged. It didn't make me feel altered really in any way. So I've been taking it now for 2 weeks, and I feel like I'm me again. I feel like I'm more in control. I'm more calm, but not in a sedated type of way. I feel like I'm more able to enjoy the things in my life that bring me enjoyment. So that's really been a godsend, and I don't anticipate taking it for a long time, but I think for, the short term to help me through these next few months. And if I need it after that, fine, but it's really been a godsend. I wish that, I would hope that other caregivers would, if they are feeling that way, just down and sad, that they would give it a chance. And if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But if it does, that's just one more weapon in your arsenal to help you through the...
You just do everything yourself, and then it finally comes to a point that you realize you can't do what he needs anymore. And that was very hard to accept. I wanted to fulfill his needs. And by just continuing and continuing, I got very sick. I got so run down. I got pneumonia and bronchitis. I was in the hospital, and so somebody else had to take care of him. And I called his son to come get him, which he did. And I was so sick for about a month, there was no way I could consider bringing him back home. And what I realized at that time, and it took me a while, these things just don't happen overnight. And I also had some help from my family to realize that I could not physically take care of his needs anymore. It was bad for me and it was bad for him. So my son came with me, which I was so grateful for, because just the thought of going to look for an assisted living or a nursing home, it was just more than I could do. I could not get myself up and pick up one foot in front of the other to go get in the car and drive and look around. I just couldn't do it. It was just like this invisible barrier, but I could not do it. And so I asked for help, and my son was able at the time to spend actually 5 weeks with me. And we explored everything that we could, and then ultimately we found an assisted living home. And that was the hardest call. He was over at his son's, and I knew we needed to get him out of there because he really wasn't getting the care he needed. His son worked long hours and just wasn't there to fix his meals and watch his medicines and things like that. The day I called him and said, pack your clothes, we're coming to get you, and we're going to go to an assisted living home. Oh, I feel it now. It was just, and then I said, and we'll go to lunch though before that, because that's one of his things is eating. We went ahead and we went out to lunch, and he had a good time, wasn't bothering him at all. And then we stopped by Walmart, and the only thing he was interested in was getting some snacks. And so we got him some snacks to take with him, and that made him happy. And then we took him on over and introduced him, to everyone, and introduced him to his room. And he looked around, and he was okay. He wasn't real happy, but he was just okay. And the first couple of days, he called me really complaining. Oh, he found everything in the world wrong with it. And I thought, well, it'll get better. And so I just kept encouraging him to make friends and settle in. And he said, and daycare is going to start. I didn't live in an area that I could get him to any daycare. And so now he was going to get to go to daycare 5 days a week. And he was so excited about that, just like a child going to go to school, and excited about it. And so after he started going to the daycare, well, he started making friends, he was playing games, he was dancing. He won a t-shirt for being the best dancer that day. Little things that, oh, he was so proud of him. He would call me every time there was a big accomplishment like that for him. But he just started finding his place and settling in. And the best he would ever say was, well, it's okay. Wouldn't say he liked it, but it's okay. But he's really settling in, and now I feel that I'm also settling in because it's such a huge change.
Well, we struggled with that back in 6 or 7 months ago when my mom, when we thought we were moving her down here sort of unexpectedly, and we looked at the different options, and we considered her living in my home, with my family, and we considered moving her out to a small home that she owns in the town where her family lives, and we considered living facilities. And at that time, I think our choices were different, and it's amazing that was only 6 or 7 months ago, but I feel like at this point we're already past several of those options. And I've prayed about it, how am I going to know when that time is? And that was a huge source of stress for me. How am I going to know when the right time is? And about 3 or 4 weeks ago, she came to visit me, and she had been visiting her sister for a while, and then she came to visit me to give her fiance a break. And we noticed we were having some bathroom issues, and we don't know for sure. It's still a little bit hard to tell, but we think maybe we're dealing with some fecal incontinence. And the problem is that she was having accidents, and that she wouldn't tell anyone she had had an accident. She would try to clean it up, and she didn't really know how to properly do that. And so I don't want to get go into too much detail, but but I will for the caregivers that may experience this. We found some of her feces in the sink in our guest bathroom, and it was like she had tried to push it down the sink, and that was obviously a really emotional. It's like, wow, this is my mom. How can this happen? But I think after it took me a few days to really figure out what was going on. And then so we started putting all the puzzle pieces together and started realizing that maybe we were starting to deal with incontinence. And I called some people, and you being one of them, and said, is this maybe what's going on? And, you know, got confirmation. And all of a sudden I felt like this peace come over me. Once this realization settled in, I felt like God was saying, Nicole, I know you've been questioning this and not knowing, you know, wondering, how am I going to know when it's the right time? And all of a sudden I felt this peace come over me, like he was giving me a very clear sign that I couldn't ignore, that it was time. Because that's not really something with an adult that you can, because they don't understand how to clean it up, and they'll try, and it ends up being kind of a hygiene issue for everyone in the house. And from what I understand, that's one of the #1 reasons that caregivers move their loved one into some type of living facility, is because that becomes very difficult to deal with, and I knew that her fiance would not be able to handle that. And I understand that. And so I felt this piece about it, that he was telling me it's time. So now I feel like we haven't actually moved her yet, but I've researched facilities, and I went myself the first few times, and then I took some of her family, some of her sisters and her brother with me to look so I could get their input. And we found a facility that's very nice, and I feel like, you know, in a lot of ways, I feel like my mom will be better off there. She'll have a very normal schedule, which I understand is very important. She will have people there that know how and are specially trained to deal with the issues that she's dealing with. She will have friends right there with her. And, you know, she'll be able to take advantage of some things like maybe some occupational therapy and stuff like that to possibly reestablish some of those brain connections. So I feel like it's the best and safest place for her. The challenge is we're at point A, and I know we need to get to point B, but I'm not sure how to get there. So we've hired a social worker actually in Austin, a geriatric care manager, I think there are different names for him, and she's helping us, and she's, for me, been like an angel that dropped out of the sky. Because she has a very good understanding of Alzheimer's. She knows me very well by this point. She knows my mom's fiance, and she's getting to know my mom, and she's going over a couple times a week and visiting with my mom, and she's starting to introduce her to the idea of maybe making some decisions and maybe moving to San Antonio and maybe moving into some type of senior living community. And so she's helping us introduce her to the idea, and then I'm doing my part by telling my mom that I love her and that I really would like for her to be here closer to me, and that we would have a lot of fun here. And so we're taking baby steps, and it's still scary because I don't know how it's all gonna play out, and I don't know once we actually move her how she's gonna react. So that's terrifying, but I feel like we're doing the right thing for her.
The decision that I made to place my husband in the assisted living home was the toughest one I've made, I believe, all along. I thought I had made tough decisions, but that one gets you, because it is the finalization and you're acknowledging the fact that he's gone from your life as you knew him for good. And so I went ahead and just was upset to no end. And when my son and I drove over to pick him up, when I walked in and saw him, and he was, fumbling around and stumbling with his words, there was the biggest relief that came over me. It was like, I'm doing the right thing. Because when I saw him in person, because I hadn't seen him then in a couple of weeks probably, and it was so obvious he needed so much help, so much more than what I could give him, that was my reassurance that I was doing the right thing. And it was like I was joyful. And it went from one extreme to the other. But when I saw him and saw how much or how many needs that he had. And I knew I couldn't provide them. I was worn out. I could not entertain him daily. I could not brag on him to reinforce his self-esteem. I could not fix all his meals. I could not take him for social things. It was just obvious I couldn't do this. There's still many things, you know, taking him to the doctor and going to see him and making sure all of his needs are provided, whether it's a chest in his room or clothes that he needs, or, you know, it's just numerous things that just daily living. And so part of my time is spent doing that, but I do not run to the assisted living home every day by any means. And sometimes it's even 2 weeks before I go, but I talk to him on a regular basis. And so it's a good separation, but a together time, if that makes any sense. You know, I've heard so many people say that they have guilt feelings for placing their loved one in a nursing home or assisted living. And I've got to tell you, I must be something wrong with me or something, but I don't have any guilt feelings about it. From the very beginning, the minute he started acting different, I took him to the best doctors I could get him to. We got him on Namenda, Aricept, all of the latest medicines immediately. And it's been over 5 years now. So I do think those medicines help slow the progression of this. So he was able to stay at home longer. But we met all of his needs. I did everything I knew to do for him. And then when it just got to where I couldn't provide for him, I needed to find somebody who could. I mean, that's not a guilt, that's just taking care of him. And he is in a place now. He has as much freedom as he can possibly have with assisted living, but yet he has all his medication taken care of, all of his meals provided. He does not have to make any decisions on anything. It's just fun and games. And he is like a child now. And all he wants to do is go swimming, play dominoes, play bingo, dance, those type of things. It's just a play. And he is having the best time he has had in several years now. So I just don't have a guilt feeling. I have it's like an excitement that he's happy. He's got the things he needs. So, I mean, that's the only answer I can.
Let's just start from the beginning of the day. If I get up when I get up in the morning, there's already dishes he's washed that he's used, and he doesn't use soap. And if he got his cup of coffee, he spilled it, or on some days he might break the cup. Or if he doesn't make it to the bathroom on time, he might have urinated there. And then when I ask him, well, Tony, why didn't you get a towel or something? I didn't do that. Kind of like it's all in denial. So from the beginning, I'd get up and I'd wait outside my bedroom door and I'd take a deep breath and I'd say, oh Lord, what am I going to encounter today? Let me not yell at this poor man. It's not his fault. But it was very seriously upsetting just from getting up in the morning. And then it just proceeded to that. He might holler at me because he couldn't find his cereal, which he goes every day to the same cabinet to get his cereal, but he just couldn't find it that day. Or he loves ham and eggs, and if I'd make ham that day, maybe it wasn't a ham day for him that day. Or if I would ask him, okay, well, are you ready now? Let's go to the doctor. I don't have a doctor's appointment. Or he might have already called and canceled, because while he was still pretty lucid, he'd call and cancel them and never tell me, and I had a hard time trying to keep account of everything until I finally got in touch with the gym clinic and let everyone know, only talk to me about his appointments. Only talk to me. All his other doctors and all, only talk to me. And then we kind of got more of a control on it.
I didn't really know Mom. you know, seeing her on furloughs every few years and spending a few weeks is a very different thing than living day to day. And the strength that she had was being a very independent person and self-reliant. But the problem comes in is when a person like that, who's all her life been independent, now needs help. That's, to me, that was the biggest struggle, because we kept thinking like, this is great, we can help you, you know, we want to help you. And her thing was, I don't need your help and I'm okay. And yet we knew that she wasn't. So we could see her losing cognitive skills and being able to make good decisions. And at the same time, she still thinks of us as kids, you know. I mean, I can understand that, but that was hard in my relationship, because I have 5 kids of my own, and I'm used to taking care of people, and I like to do it. And it was sort of a bit of a facer to find out that I don't really want your help or need it. Yeah. You know, so I think that was hard, to just come to terms with, you know, this is the way it is, and the person that's going to have to change is me. I guess the challenge for me is to, like I said earlier, remember that I'm the adult. Because it's the surprises. I think this is the thing with Alzheimer's, is you're going along and it's kind of an even keel, or you're in a routine, and that's what we've tried to maintain with Mom.
Well, I've cried a lot. I've ranted and raved a lot. I don't like to work out in the yard, but I have become a gardener. If it wasn't for my husband holding my hand a lot, I think I'd go crazy. The gym clinic has helped a lot. Coming to this class that the gym clinic referred me to has helped tremendously. I didn't know there was help out there for a caregiver. I just thought, oh well, you're on your own. And I'd call. I did call a couple of places, and it was kind of like, well, there's no hope. So we just kind of tried to handle it on our own and just vent to good neighbors, good friends, a few family members on our side of the family that would listen. But you know, after a while I got tired of hearing myself just saying, oh God, another day, oh God, another day.
What was already routine and daily for us, it was a big long list. Now you have to do this first thing in the morning, and remember, you know, and it's like, you know what, this isn't good. This isn't good in Mom's best interest. So I would say maintaining patience with Mom when a new issue comes up, because it means your apple cart's overturned and you have to start again and reframe. You know, keep going back to like, okay, that worked for a while, but she's changing in her brain, is what I think. It may look all the same on the surface to me, but that's really not what's going on, and there's no way for me to know.
He wasn't there for emotional support. He wasn't there to put his arm around you and hold you at night. He wasn't there to help you make financial decisions. He wasn't there to pay bills. He wasn't there to even go see friends. He was starting to live in his own little world. And so he had just pulled back into that world, which was getting smaller and smaller, and he was regressing, until finally I realized he was in like his teenage years. All he was talking about was all his teenage friends, and he had 3 really good friends. And he started calling them. He hadn't called them in years. He started calling them, and then he went to see them, and you know, he wanted to hang out with them, and with all of that, I started seeing that my husband, as you know, a husband, was totally gone. And to me, I had to, the day that it really hit me, it was like accepting that my husband was dead. I cried my eyes out. I grieved for months. And, you know, no one knows you're grieving, but you do. I mean, it's even tearful now because your husband's dead. But there is a man there that you've loved, and you want to take care of him. And then it becomes, well, what is the best way to take care of him? And then you start trying to take care of him in the ways that you know and fill his needs, taking care of all decisions. Making every decision by yourself is really tough when you have had a good husband that has always helped you. And all of a sudden you find that you have to do that because his decision making is skewed. And if you follow that, well, you're going to be in trouble.
Well, I think when we first came home with Mom and we're trying to set things up and help her, adjust to our household, and that I had all kinds of ideas about, how to help her do this, and I would make great lists and show her how charts and one of the things that's been really that I've had to deal with and come to terms with is those things don't work with Mom anymore. She doesn't learn new tasks, and no matter how simple it seems that I'll make something, it's like she just can't handle it.
Part of the thing with Lewy bodies and the way it was affecting him, he thought that I was the problem. He didn't have a problem. He was in total denial, and that I was making this up. I was the one taking him to the doctors, to the hospitals. It was all my fault. So 100% in his mind, which is a delusion, but he believed if he killed me, he would be well. So I was living with that, not only the threat of it, but he had attempted it several times. And every time he attempted it, I put him in a psychiatric ward. They'd work with him and send him home and say, oh, he's fine. Well, it just continued, actually for years. And I was so afraid that we had separate bedrooms, which was actually his request, but for whatever reason. But I had to put a lock on my door, and I locked my door every night because I could not trust him. And since he had truly tried to kill me, I didn't know if he would try it at nighttime when I wouldn't be able to defend myself. So I lived behind a locked door, and my kids still didn't believe me. And then as it went on, one of my daughters was very supportive. She figured it out, and she started being supportive of me. But I have a son and daughter that truly scoffed at me. And when we had a big reunion, my grandson got married, and that was wonderful. But everybody came. And so while they were there, and it was the time that I was very, very ill, and they were truly helping me to do everything, they realized that I was truly sick, and they were around enough to start noticing more things with my husband. And so my son said he would just have an extended visit and stay and work with me and help me get anything done I needed. Well, we went to the psychiatrist with my husband and my son, and I asked if my son could come in, and my husband said sure. He didn't care. So the psychiatrist said fine. So during that period of time, my husband was just talking about all the different times he tried to kill me and how he tried. And it was just an everyday talk. It's like, of course we do this. Everybody does this. And my son was just devastated. And so the psychiatrist asked him, when was the last time he wanted to hurt me? And he said, 2 weeks ago. And I think that's what opened my son's eyes. And so after that, it was a 100% turnaround. I had his total support, which was fabulous. I needed it so badly, and it was just so wonderful to have it. And then through that, he spoke to my other daughter, And with him seeing it firsthand and hearing everything, he was able to relay that to her, and she just did a turnaround. And so now I have had so much of my family at the house and truly supporting me and understanding now. And all of this just happened at the time that my husband went into the assisted living, which it's no coincidence. I mean, I don't believe in that. I do believe that this is the work of God. He orchestrates everything, and he pulled all this together at the time that I truly needed my family. And that helped me tremendously in putting Mike into the nursing home.
I would say educate yourself, start being educated on it. Find out what resources are available. Was when we saw, this flyer for this Alzheimer's seminar that we went to. That was such a terrific thing because it just opened up. I mean, there were, I don't know, 20 tables or more of people that have resources. The resources that we've been provided here at StressBusters, I mean, they're like, quote, Bibles, to refer back to, and then build a network. Yeah. I mean, which is again stressed in all the information, but sometimes I think people think that, well, I should be able to do that, and really, more is better.
I guess a couple of the little things I would say are don't expect a lot of gratitude or approval from that person, because it gets frustrating, I think, early on because they're still in pretty good shape, and so you kind of still expect that from them, but yet there's no way they could ever really know what all you're doing behind the scenes to help them. And so don't expect them to show gratitude towards you. My mom does say sometimes, Nicole, thank you for everything that you've done for me, but then there are other times that she has no idea the hours and hours and hours that I've spent, in the background trying to take care of things for her. So there's no way she could understand that. She gets upset because I don't come up there for the weekend. And I'm like, that's because I'm here doing stuff for you, Mom. But, and approval. Someone told me in getting ready to move her, Nicole, don't expect to have her approval in this decision because you're probably not ever going to get it. And just knowing that going into it, I think, is important. Try to enjoy the things in your life, try to prioritize, try to learn whatever it is. I feel like God has a purpose in this for me, and I feel like there's a reason for this, and I don't know what it is, and I'll never know what it is, most likely. But I feel like there's something He wants me to learn through this process, and I have committed to God that I will do my part to try to learn that, and I know He will do His part to help teach me that. And so I'm just trying to be open to this experience and let it develop whatever character in me it's supposed to. But I think there are two big things that I would say for caregivers. Prepare ahead of time. If you see something coming and you know that eventually you're going to need to find a living facility for them, or that eventually you need to have their will redone or something like that, start now. Start talking to attorneys. Start touring facilities. Don't wait until you get to the point where it's got to be done and it's a crisis situation. I've had so many people through this process say, gosh, Nicole, you're doing such a great job preparing, and that's just me. I feel better if I do that. But I think looking back on it at the time, I was like, well, why wouldn't everyone do this? But looking back on it, I think I'm so glad that back in January I went and toured facilities, because now I've had time to digest that and had time to kind of figure that into the picture, and it's not such a big jump for me now to make and to decide on the right place. So prepare ahead of time as soon as you can. But the number one thing I would say is ask for help. I have had so many people help me through this process. I've talked about my husband, I've talked about my family members. If it's a neighbor that you ask to come over and say, can you just stay with them for an hour or two while I go run some errands or just take a break? If it's legal advice, if it's medical advice, You know, and if you don't get the answer you're looking for, then talk to someone else. Keep talking. The social workers, the geriatric care managers, we had one here in San Antonio that was helping us, and we've had one in Austin that's helping us, and they have been a tremendous asset to us. I mean, I cannot say enough about the assistance they provided and just being able to call them and saying, here's what's going on, now what do we do? They're familiar with Alzheimer's, I'm not. They know how to handle these situations, and they can give me suggestions on how to handle things with my mom, and that's been just a godsend for me. So ask for help. Don't be afraid. Don't try to do it on your own, because that's what my mom's fiance tried to do, and it didn't work very well for him. But it's too hard. It's too hard to do it on your own, so don't be afraid to ask for help.
Depend on others to where you can, which we've done, we've had to do.
Yep.
And been able to do, so we're thankful for that. And yeah, I know the spiritual aspect has been very important to us. Prayer has been very helpful, and we depend on God. So
Be sure this is what you want to do. We need caregivers. This whole world needs caregivers. I think the biggest thing, or the most important thing I would say, Alan, is be sure and get the psychological evaluation first so that you really know what you're dealing with. Because in our case, we knew there was something not hitting the switch, but we didn't realize how much until he had that psychiatric evaluation. I'm not sure that would have, I think, I want to take that back. I think that would have helped us tremendously from the get-go if we had really known how mentally ill he was. We just thought it was physical. And I think that might have better prepared me through the internet or books or some calling somebody to know, what exactly does dementia mean? What does the frontal lobe mean? What does this mean? You know, it would have prepared us, well, he's going to start acting like this, be prepared, or you're going to have to go and make sure this and this. You know, I always have trusted in doctors, and I thought, okay, I'll go up and tell him, well, he's done this, this, and this, and okay, this is what he's got. It's not that easy. It's not that easy. One of the other things I would tell someone is find a good support group before you ever even go into this. I know you love that person, but it's going to be a hell of a long, long and hard road. And you've got to realize this is not the same person it was 3 months ago or 4 months ago. And you just got to really be committed to it, because we, like I said, we need caregivers. I may need it someday, you know. We all might. And I think that being a caregiver is a very hard it's a very hard job, and it takes just a very certain special kind of person to do it. You have to have lots of patience and lots and lots of...
We are going to look in on Denise. She's a caregiver for her husband, Walter, who has Alzheimer's disease. Denise has just spent a very frustrating night with Walter.
Monica!
Hi, Denise. I haven't seen you in days, which is pretty bad. We live right next to each other. So I figured I'd bring some muffins. Maybe we can get caught up a little.
Oh, good. Come sit down. Let me pour you some coffee. Oh, sorry, this place is so messy. Oh.
We got some stuff going on. So how are you?
Oh, fine.
Now, we're friends, remember? Tell me, what's really going on with you? I haven't seen you in days. You've been like a hermit. How are things with Walter?
Well, things aren't so good. He's been getting worse, and I don't know. I'm just no good at this caregiving thing. I don't know if I can do this anymore.
What do you mean you're not good at this? I see how you take care of him. His health, all his medical appointments, everything that he needs to attend to. You're on top of things.
Oh, that's nothing. you know, anybody can do that. No, I'm really bad at this. I'll tell you. Let me tell you about last night. I woke up about 1 o'clock in the morning and Walter wasn't in his bed. So I get up and find him wandering around the living room. He's been doing this lately. Last 4 nights he's been up wandering around like this. So I lead him back to the bedroom, get him settled down, and finally try to fall asleep. About an hour later, I don't know how long later, I get up and he's gone again. So I get up, go out in the living room, look around. He's not in the living room. He's not in the kitchen. He's not anywhere around. I don't know where he is. You know, the other day he got out of the house and he went into the street. So I was sure that he had gone out into the street in the middle of the night and was hit by a car. I went out on the porch, couldn't see anything in the dark, went looking around, couldn't see anything, and thought, oh, he's gone. I'm never going to see him again. So I go back into the house to try to call the police and see if they can help me, and I pass the spare bedroom, and there he was, in the old bed, fast asleep.
Well, you really jumped to a dramatic conclusion there.
Well, maybe. I don't know. But the worst of it, he just looked so peaceful lying there. How can he look so peaceful when I was just getting frantic with worry with him? Yeah. So I figured, well, at least he's sleeping. So I let him sleep. I went back to bed, tried to get some rest, and a little while later, thumping on the piano, banging on the piano. Didn't you hear him in the middle of the night? I thought he was going to wake all the neighbors up. And at that point, I totally lost it. It was awful. I just went in there and started screaming at him and pointing my finger at him and telling him to get in bed and this is wrong behavior and he should know better. Oh, and then,
Go on.
I can't. I am so bad. I am such a loser. I can't believe I did this.
You're not a loser. What happened?
Well, listen to what I made him do. It was awful. So I wouldn't let up on him. And I did it until he just burst, and then he flew into a rage. He got the little Hummel from my table and threw it against the wall, and he started screaming at me obscenities and saying he was going to leave and run away. And you know, Walt, he's not like that. But I was so frightened, I didn't know what to do. I was really gonna call the police, but I couldn't even. I just sat there. It was awful. I couldn't move. And finally he settled down. But I'm so ashamed of what I did.
What are you ashamed of?
Don't you get it? I caused him to act like that. I made him. I never should have shouted at him and treated him like a child like that. I should be the one in control and in keeping him calmed down, and I stirred him up.
Now, Denise, yeah, you probably could have handled it a little bit different, but you were sleep deprived. You're tired. You did the best that you could. Is there any way you can get some help? Maybe the kids can come by and help you out?
No, I can't ask the kids. They're so busy with their own lives and the little ones and taking them to soccer practice and games and running them all around. And, you know, they've offered to help sometimes, but they don't always come through because, you know, they're busy. You know, and I should be the grandmother to them. I should be helping them, and I feel so ashamed of myself I'm not even being a good grandmother to them. And besides, you know, sometimes Walter can be okay. It's like his old self again. And usually that's when the kids are around. And so, quite frankly, Monica, I don't think they believe me when I tell them about all the things he does.
The things he does?
Oh my gosh. It's the repetitive questions over and over. What time is it? What time is it? No matter how many times or different ways I tell him, he just keeps saying it over and over. I feel like I'm losing my mind. And then he has this thing where he doesn't think he's going to have enough food, so he starts hoarding food. In the wildest places. He hoards everything, but the food is getting really bad. Some time ago, I bought some celery. Anyway, you know, I'm at the store, I buy some celery, put it in the refrigerator. I go to get the celery, and it's not in the refrigerator. And I couldn't figure it out. I know I bought celery. You know, maybe I'm losing my mind too. I don't know. And then I found the celery. A week later.
Oh, where was it?
In his underwear drawer. The wrapper was off.
Oh.
You can only imagine.
Oh.
Well, I don't know.
Sounds like things are getting really rough. How are you dealing with all of this?
I don't know. I'm not. I'm not exactly emotionally stable. You can see that. I'm tired all the time. I know I'm going to get sick. I just, you know, things have been tight with the finances anyway, and I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do, Monica.
Well, it really sounds like something needs to change.
Yeah, but what?
Probably the biggest change is I have found that we have become his parents. Tony has always been Rick's father figure, and Rick has always revered him as being so strong and smart and easy to deal with, easy to get along with fellow. And the biggest changes that we've seen are he's not easygoing anymore. He can't make decisions anymore, and it's frustrating to him and to us and to others. Probably one of the biggest changes that has occurred is that no one believes us when we tell him how sick he is.
My marriage has changed gradually, but that's been the most devastating thing for me to deal with personally. You have a lot of the physical things which you can deal with, but seeing your husband disappear before your eyes, and you're fighting so hard to keep him there. I would do things with him, I would help him do things, and I'm talking about like building a back porch or doing something in the yard, trimming a tree, things that I wouldn't normally do. But with him, I was there to help him because I wanted him to still do all these things. I didn't want to lose him. And I would get angry when he couldn't do the things. And the anger was just me not wanting to lose him. And you get into this routine though, and pretty soon it's out of hand and you don't understand why.
I think that for me to recognize that how territorial I am, like in my kitchen, and Norman said it for years, but until there was somebody else that was actually felt like they belonged in the kitchen too, well, it's just been a change.
You let your friendships go, you let your hobbies go, the things that you do just for yourself. Those type of things you just sort of put in the background because you need more time to care for your loved one. And like I said, it happens so subtly you don't even realize that. I didn't realize that until now when I can look back and see what was really happening to me.
The time that it's taken is taken a tremendous amount of time to, you know, sort of in effect take over my mom's life. My mom owns a business and owns rental properties and owns ranch land, so she's got a very, I mean, thankfully that's the case, but she's got a very, you know, detailed business and trying to figure out where her money's invested and if it's invested correctly for the current situation. And legally, we had to do a lot of, you know, things legally to try to make sure she was protected and that her will was updated and that I had powers of attorney. So it took a tremendous amount of time back in January and February. I made a change. I went from full-time, I work full-time, and I have a husband and I have 2 small children. They're 2 and 4 years old, and so my life was already full and very busy, and I was tired a lot, with 2 small children and a full-time job. But so trying to find the time to take care of all this stuff for my mom and figure it out and try to prepare and do things correctly has just taken a tremendous amount of time of mine. It's taken time away from me spending time with my children. I changed from full-time to part-time, so obviously that's a change in financial picture for my husband and I. And it's just, like I said, it's taken a tremendous amount of time and just making the adjustments necessary. My husband really stepped up to the plate and has taken up a lot of my slack, frankly, taking care of my kids, because there were times I was either just so distracted or so stressed out or whatever that I just wasn't available to be there for them. So it's changed our life dramatically.
Well, I just think the big change was that, now I'm directing Mom. She didn't always think that she needed directions, but of course, she does need.
It was 100% devoted to him. It was trying to find out what was wrong. He had some bizarre behaviors and things that just weren't normal. So going to the doctors and just the emergency rooms, everything was focused on him. And this went on for actually a year and a half. And so you kind of lose yourself in there. You just totally turn your life into living for that person. That was one of the first big changes, but you do it so lovingly and willingly, you don't realize you're losing yourself.